The price of gold, the air in West End, Arkansas, clung heavy with the scent of honeysuckle and damp earth, a sweet, cloying perfume that summer always brought. For young Sarah, it was the smell of stagnation, of a life laid out like a worn quilt, predictable, patched, and ultimately confining. Daniel, with his steady hands and honest eyes, was a part of that quilt. He was the boy next door, the one who knew her dreams before she spoke them, the one who saw her not just as Sarah, but as a universe of possibility. Their love was a quiet, sturdy thing, built on shared laughter over fireflies and whispered promises under the vast, star-dusted sky. He worked hard at his father's hardware store, saving every penny, dreaming of a small farm where they could raise chickens and watch their children grow. Then came Richard. He arrived in a gleaming black Cadillac, a stark contrast to the dust-covered pickups that usually rumbled down their gravel road. Richard wasn't from West End. He was from Little Rock, a city that shimmered with the promise of bright lights and boundless opportunity, a world away from the endless rows of cotton and corn. He wore expensive suits that always seemed perfectly tailored, smelled of a sophisticated cologne that hinted at distant, exotic places, and spoke with an easy confidence that West End boys simply didn't possess. He was older, 28 to Sarah's 20, and he embodied everything she craved: escape, glamour, a life beyond the reach of the honeysuckle scent. Their courtship was a whirlwind of expensive dinners in Little Rock, trips to boutiques where Sarah, for the first time, felt truly beautiful in silks and laces, and whispers of a future that sparkled like the diamonds Richard would later press into her hand. Daniel watched, his heart slowly fracturing, as Sarah's laughter grew louder, her eyes brighter, no longer reflecting the simple joys they once shared, but instead a desperate hunger for something more. One sweltering July evening, Daniel found Sarah by the old oak tree, their usual spot. His voice was raw with unshed tears. "Sarah, please, don't do this. I know I can't give you what he can, not yet, but I can give you everything else. My heart, my life." Sarah looked at him, her gaze flitting past him to an imagined horizon. "Daniel, you don't understand. I can't stay here. I feel like I'm drowning. Richard, he offers me a way out." Her voice was soft, apologetic, but firm. The words were a sword, carving a chasm between them that neither could bridge. She chose the gilded cage over the open sky, the shimmering promise of gold over the quiet warmth of true affection. She married Richard a month later in a lavish ceremony in Little Rock. The pictures in the society pages showed a radiant bride, a triumphant smile plastered on her face. No one saw the tremor in her hand as she signed the marriage certificate, or the faint shadow in her eyes that hinted at a regret already taking root. Daniel didn't come to the wedding. He simply disappeared from West End for a while, a ghost haunting the places they once shared. 40 years bled into each other, a tapestry woven with threads of silk and steel. Sarah's life in Little Rock was, on the surface, everything she had dreamed of. A sprawling house in an exclusive neighborhood, manicured lawns, a swimming pool that glittered under the Arkansas sun. She hosted elaborate dinner parties, joined exclusive country clubs, and had a closet overflowing with designer clothes. She was Mrs. Richard Sterling, a woman of means, envied by many. But behind the polished facade, the reality was a slow, suffocating descent. Richard, the charming suitor, transformed into a controlling tyrant. His charm was a veneer, thin and easily shattered. His expectations were endless, his criticisms sharp, cutting. He demanded perfection, not just from his home and his business, but from Sarah herself. A misplaced napkin, a slightly overcooked steak, a conversation with the wrong person at a social event. Any perceived transgression could trigger a cold silence that stretched for days, or worse, a flash of temper that left bruises on her arms, hidden beneath long sleeves and expertly applied makeup. "You embarrassed me," he would sneer, his voice low and menacing, after a public slight. "Don't you ever do that again." The slaps were rare at first, then more frequent, delivered with a detached cruelty that chilled her to the bone. She became a master of concealment, a magician of foundation and concealer, transforming her face into an unblemished canvas. Even as her spirit was chipping away, she smiled for the cameras, laughed at the appropriate times, and whispered sweet nothings to her husband in public. All while a silent scream echoed within her. Their daughter, Lisa, grew up in this gilded cage, surrounded by luxury but starved of genuine warmth. Sarah tried to be the perfect mother, to shield Lisa from Richard's volatile temper, to create a semblance of normalcy. But children are perceptive. Lisa sensed the tension, the forced smiles, the underlying fear that permeated their grand house. She saw the way her mother flinched when Richard's voice rose, the way her eyes darted nervously when he entered a room. As a teenager, Lisa became rebellious, seeking solace in late nights and bad company, anything to escape the stifling atmosphere of her home. Her relationship with Sarah grew strained, marked by unspoken resentment and a chasm of misunderstanding. Meanwhile, in West End, life moved at a different pace. Daniel, after his initial heartbreak, poured his energy into building something real, something meaningful. He took over his father's hardware store, expanding it, modernizing it, but never losing its small-town charm. He married a kind, gentle woman named Martha, who brought laughter and light back into his life. They never had children, but their home was always filled with the warmth of community. Years turned into decades, and Daniel's compassion grew. He saw stray dogs wandering the dusty roads, neglected cats abandoned by the highway. He started taking them in, feeding them, finding them homes. What began as a personal mission slowly blossomed into something larger. With tireless dedication and the support of the community, Daniel opened the West End Animal Sanctuary, a sprawling haven for abandoned animals, a place of second chances. He was no longer just the hardware store owner. He was a beloved figure, a pillar of kindness and integrity, known throughout the county for his generosity and unwavering spirit. He built a life rich in purpose, grounded in genuine connection, a stark contrast to the superficial world Sarah inhabited. Sarah would occasionally see glimpses of West End news in the regional papers. A short article about Daniel's sanctuary, a picture of him surrounded by happy dogs. Each time, a pang of something unidentifiable would twist in her gut. Was it regret? Envy? Or simply a painful reminder of a path not taken? She would quickly turn the page, pushing the images of Daniel and his simple, honest life deep into the recesses of her mind. A dusty box she refused to open. The call came on a Tuesday morning. shattering the carefully constructed peace of Sarah's perfectly ordered world. Richard had suffered a massive heart attack. He was gone. The initial shock was quickly replaced by a bewildering mix of relief and terror. The gilded cage was open, but she had forgotten how to fly. The weeks that followed were a blur of lawyers, accountants, and devastating revelations. Richard, the astute businessman, had been living a lie. His empire was built on a crumbling foundation of debt and reckless speculation. He had mortgaged everything: the house, the investments, even the company itself, to fuel his extravagant lifestyle and prop up failing ventures. Sarah was left not with a fortune, but with a mountain of debt, a hollow shell of a life, and the crushing weight of Richard's secrets. The lawyers advised her to sell everything: the house, the cars, the jewelry, all of it, to pay off the creditors. She was adrift, 70 years old, with no savings, no marketable skills, and a lifetime of being told what to do. The only asset she still owned, technically, was the small, dilapidated house in West End, her childhood home, which Richard had insisted she never sell for reasons she now understood. It was a safe, untraceable investment, a small emergency fund in his vast, precarious empire. With a heavy heart, Sarah packed a single suitcase and drove the familiar highway back to West End. The honeysuckle scent reaching out to greet her like an old, forgotten friend. The house was exactly as she had left it, frozen in time, a relic of a life she had desperately tried to escape. Dust motes danced in the shafts of sunlight, illuminating faded wallpaper and a lifetime of memories. She began the arduous task of clearing out the house, preparing it for sale. In the attic, tucked away in a dusty trunk, she found a stack of old letters, tied with a faded blue ribbon. Her heart gave a jolt. They were from Daniel, unopened. She had never read them, too caught up in the whirlwind of Richard's attention, too afraid of what they might say, of what feelings they might stir. Her hands trembled as she untied the ribbon. The first letter was dated weeks after she left. "Sarah, I know you made your choice, and it hurts, more than I can say. But I had to tell you, one last time, that my love for you is real. It's not about how much money I have or what I can buy you. It's about who you are, the light in your eyes, the way you make me laugh. I wish you all the happiness in the world, truly. I hope he makes you happy. But if he doesn't, if you ever need a friend or a place to land, just remember, I'll always be here, somewhere in West End. My heart will always hold a piece of you. Yours, Daniel." Tears blurred her vision as she read through the letters, each one a testament to his steadfast love, his quiet pain, his unwavering hope for her happiness. There were also entries from an old diary, her own shaky handwriting, revealing snippets of her inner turmoil. October 12th, age 22. Richard yelled again tonight. "I hate this. But where would I go? What would I do? He's my husband now. I made my bed." April 5th, age 35. Lisa saw the bruise on my arm. I told her I fell. She looked at me with those knowing eyes. God, I feel so trapped. July 1st, age 50. Saw Daniel's name in the paper. Animal sanctuary. He always had such a kind heart. What if? No, don't think about it. My life is here. My choice was made. Each word was a knife, twisting in the wound of her long-buried regret. She saw the parallel lives, the stark contrast. She had chosen superficial glitter, and he had chosen meaningful purpose. She had sought escape, and he had built a haven. One afternoon, while picking up groceries in the small West End store, Sarah's eyes locked with a familiar pair across the aisle. Daniel. His hair was silver at the temples, lines etched around his kind eyes, but the warmth in them was unmistakable. He was pushing a cart filled with bags of dog food. "Sarah," he said, his voice a little rough with surprise, but gentle. "Is that really you?" She felt a flush creep up her neck, a mixture of shame and disbelief. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw a man radiating quiet strength, genuine happiness. He looked content, fulfilled. She, on the other hand, felt like a ship wrecked on a distant shore. "Daniel," she managed, her voice barely a whisper. "It's been a long time." They talked for an hour in the coffee shop next door, a halting conversation filled with polite inquiries about their lives, each word laden with unspoken history. He spoke of Martha, his late wife, with a tenderness that made Sarah's heart ache. He spoke of the sanctuary, his eyes lighting up with passion as he described the animals, the volunteers, the joy of giving them a second chance. He didn't ask about Richard or her life in Little Rock. He just listened, his gaze steady and compassionate, devoid of judgment. Sarah, for the first time in decades, felt a tremor of honesty escape her lips. She spoke vaguely of changes and new beginnings, but the unspoken truth hung heavy in the air. As she left, Daniel simply said, "It's good to see you, Sarah. Really good." His words were a balm, an unexpected kindness that began to thaw the ice around her heart. The encounter sparked something in Sarah. She started volunteering at the sanctuary, at first just for a few hours, then more often. She found solace in the simple, unconditional love of the animals, in the quiet camaraderie of the other volunteers. Daniel never pressured her, never brought up the past. He simply treated her with the same kindness and respect he offered everyone. She learned to clean kennels, to walk dogs, to comfort frightened kittens. Slowly, painstakingly, the layers of pretense began to peel away. One day, while tending to a recovering stray dog, Lisa called. Her voice was strained, distant. "Mom, I think my marriage is falling apart. Mark, he's just like Dad. Controlling. I'm so tired of pretending." Sarah's breath hitched. The words were a mirror, reflecting her own agonizing past. "Oh, Lisa," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Come home, please, just come home." Lisa hesitated. Then a quiet sob escaped her. "I don't know where home is anymore, Mom." "It's here," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. "It's with me, in West End. We can figure it out together." A week later, Lisa arrived, her face pale and drawn, her own carefully constructed facade cracking. And with her came Tom, Sarah's teenage grandson, a quiet boy with eyes that held the same questioning look as his mother's. That evening, as the sun set over the Arkansas fields, casting long shadows across the old house, Sarah sat Lisa down. She didn't hide anything. She spoke of Richard's cruelty, her fear, the years of hiding bruises and shame. She showed Lisa Daniel's letters, her own diary entries. She confessed her regret, her longing for a life that could have been. Lisa listened, her eyes wide, tears streaming down her face. "Mom," she whispered, "I always felt it. I didn't know how to name it. I'm so sorry." "No," Sarah said. pulling her daughter into a fierce embrace. "I'm sorry, my love, for not being stronger, for not protecting you more, for choosing the wrong path." The confession was a catharsis, a painful but liberating release. Lisa, seeing her mother's vulnerability, her deep remorse, began to heal her own wounds. Tom, observing the raw honesty, started to look at his grandmother with a new understanding, a quiet respect. Sarah sold the West End house. It didn't fetch much, but it was enough to settle a few lingering debts and to provide a small cushion. The rest, she decided, would go to Daniel's sanctuary. She walked into his office one afternoon, a check in her hand. "Daniel," she said, her voice steady, "I want you to have this. It's not much, but it's from my heart, for all the good you've done, for all the kindness you've shown." Daniel looked at the check, then at Sarah, his eyes soft. "You don't owe me anything, Sarah." "I owe you more than you'll ever know," she replied, a genuine smile gracing her lips, a smile free of pretense, free of pain. "You built something real, something meaningful. I chose gold, and it turned to dust. You chose kindness, and it built a home for the forgotten." Sarah didn't leave West End. She found a small apartment, humble, but filled with a peace she had never known in her grand house. Lisa and Tom stayed for a while too, finding a temporary refuge in the quiet town, rebuilding their lives with Sarah's unwavering support. Lisa eventually found a new job, a new sense of purpose, and began to reclaim her own identity, guided by the lessons of her mother's painful honesty. Tom blossomed in the calm environment, finding joy in volunteering at the sanctuary, a quiet bond forming between him and Daniel. Sarah spent her days volunteering at the West End Animal Sanctuary, her hands busy, her heart full. She watched Daniel interact with the animals, with the volunteers, with the community, and saw the man she had loved, now grown into someone even more remarkable. There was no grand romantic reunion, no fairy tale ending with Daniel, but a deep, abiding friendship, a profound respect, and the quiet comfort of shared history. She finally understood. True wealth wasn't in diamonds or designer clothes, but in the unconditional wag of a dog's tail, in the genuine laughter of her daughter, in the quiet forgiveness she found, first in herself and then in the world around her. The scars remained, a testament to the choices she had made, but they were no longer hidden. They were a reminder that even after a lifetime of wrong turns, it was never too late to find your way home, to mend a broken heart, and to finally live a life of truth. The honeysuckle scent in West End no longer smelled of stagnation. It smelled of redemption, of peace, and of a love that, though long delayed, had finally found its way back to its true home.